3, 2, 1. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night Bible Study class. Tonight we're going to do something a little unusual. But before we get there, I want to make a couple of announcements. One of them is, I wear the same shirt every week, and I've never shown you the back of them. So I thought I would bring one and show you the back of what it looks like. Can you see that? I designed that, and the Pray is in like a psychedelic thing. I thought it was kind of cool. We do sell them if you're interested. Also, a friend of mine, a licensed teacher here in Illinois, has a tutoring service that she would like for you to bring your children or grandchildren to this summer. It's called WorldSpan Tutoring Service for grades kindergarten through 4th. And I heard on the news again this week that they are highly recommending for children to continue reading and doing math during the summer so that the teachers don't have to do so much work just to catch up in the fall. So, and that's what she specializes in, is reading and math. So contact Mickey Sheld. You can either call or text at 217-761-5535. 217-761-5535. Also, we are meeting as usual at Harvard Park Baptist Church and Community Center, where they are having VBS tonight, which is very cool. The downstairs is filled with a bunch of kids. And I don't really know what they're doing, but it lasts a week. I think they still got room. If you're looking for somewhere to put your kids for the rest of the week for VBS, contact them, 947-252-2565. You'll get a voicemail. Leave your info. They'll call you right back. 947-252-2565. Okay. So announcements out of the way. So, for those of you that have been around me for a while, you know that I try really hard not to be too structured, so that when the Spirit leads or decides we need to do something different, I like to be flexible enough to do that. So, I'm going to... Tonight is one of those nights, and I have no idea how long this talk is going to last because I didn't decide till this afternoon, and actually I didn't decide, but that we were going to do this evening. So I jotted down some notes, and we'll just see where the Holy Spirit wants to take it. But I want to start by telling you a story, two stories, that actually I did not put together until this afternoon. And the story goes like this. So, I'm watching a church sermon on the computer this Sunday from the pastor of this church, actually, where we're meeting. And in that sermon, he said a lot of things, all of which I agreed with, by the way. And one of the things, the overall writing message was, if you want to lead in this church, you got to be part of this church. You don't get to stay at home and write a check and then decide you're going to be a leader. It doesn't work that way. If you want to lead, come in, be part of the church, learn the ins and outs, learn the people, learn what it takes. If you can't do that, you got no business leading. Now, we do meet here. We do not meet in the sanctuary. We meet at the community center. And I have no idea who or what he's talking about. Evidently, there's some internal problems. So I kind of tuned that out when I heard it. But it was a good sermon, and I did make note of the fact that when I was listening to it, I was thinking, I know that for him right now, whatever he's going through is hard. But whenever you put more than one human being together to do anything, you're going to have conflict. And then you put, let's just say the average church is right around 100 people. You put 100 people in one room and try to decide the decisions that this church is making right now, which is remodeling, fixing up, those kinds of things, you're going to have conflict. And how you handle the conflict determines the health of the church. And he probably stepped on some toes, but he did it in a healthy way. He was upfront about it. He was firm about it. So good for him. I think there's good things ahead. But the message I want you to get from that story was, it wasn't even noon yet, and the Holy Spirit made sure that I listened to a story about a pastor in a church not being happy with the way things are moving. Okay? So, pardon me. So Sunday is ministry day for me, and for some reason I was being lazy, and a buddy of mine called, and I actually told him, he asked me what my plans were, and I said I need to record, but for some reason I'm just being lazy, and I just don't really want to do it. So I got a call from another pastor friend of mine, and he lives up north, and we'll call him Bob. His name is not Bob, but for those of you that know me and have been with me for a while, you will know this pastor. We helped his church several years ago. But so he calls, and here's his story. Now, he was in the ministry. He is trained to be a pastor. He left his pastorate down here and moved him and his family to Michigan or Minnesota, one of those states. I really don't remember. And got established. And I've kind of mentored him off and on for, I don't know, 5 years or so. And all along he has been talking to me about not being able to find a church that is theologically in line with what he believes. And he is a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching, Bible-preaching preacher. So, which didn't surprise me. And I neglected sounds like I did not do it. I did it on purpose. I did not tell him all along, why are you surprised? Because I discovered what he's in the process of discovering years ago. Bear with me. So in our conversation, he tries to go through logically and explain to me the problems that he's having. And he's telling me about his most recent church, which was a big church, and they brag about church planting, which is his gift. He's dying to plant a church. That's what he wants to do. He's wanted to do that forever. That's his ministry. He just can't find how to do it, or where to do it, when to do it, and the money to do it. So this church, he described it by saying, you go into this church, you put yourself underneath the pastor, you do everything he tells you to do, and then the church writes a check, and then you go do what he did in this new church. He said, first off, when you operate like that, that leaves the people with the money in charge. It doesn't reflect theology. It doesn't reflect the Holy Spirit. It reflects he who makes the gold, he who has the gold makes the rules, the golden rule. And he was having a problem with that because the beliefs did not line up. And he went through some of the beliefs, and he was right, they don't. The church that he is talking about usually falls under the banner of a seeker church, if you know what that means. It's not a believer's church. It's not a spirit-filled church. It's a seeker church. That's why they can have a lot of people come to this church. Now, before I go too far, I want to tell you about the title to this. I couldn't decide if I wanted to call it The Two Tales of Two Cities or The Tale of Four Churches. And I was trying to draw a parallel between, there's a book called Tale of Two Cities. And I wanted to draw a parallel between two churches in two different times in space. So, two tales of two churches, or a tale of four churches. I decided on Tale of Four Churches. So we talked about the little one here. Now we're going to talk about the big one here. Then in a little while we're going to talk about an Old Testament church and a New Testament church. That's four churches. And I want to lay out the issues with all four so you can see the parallel. Okay? So he's moved his family to Minnesota, or wherever it is. He can't get started in ministry. He tries to start a Bible study class, but he lives in an apartment, so that's not working. His wife gets pregnant. Now they now have 3 kids and them in a 2-bedroom apartment, and now he's not making enough money. So now he's going to go find a career. He was hoping to get into a pastorate full time. So now he's got to give that up, and he's got to go find a career to make money to support his family. She stays home to home teach the kids, and there's a lot of pressure, a lot of issues. And still, nobody is happy. So now the wife goes back to church. Sends the kids back to school. She goes and gets a part-time job. Nobody's happy about that decision. He is still complaining about the church that they're going to, so they switch church a couple of times. And at this point now, he's calling me, and he is so frustrated and upset that he cries on the phone. His heart is broken, his wife is upset, his family is in disarray, and so now I feel guilty and I have to tell him. And I said, "Why are you surprised when a snake acts like a snake?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "What does the Bible say about the end times? We live in the end times. You do know that, right?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what does the Bible say about the church in the end times? They don't preach the truth. They preach to tickle man's ears. So what you're telling me is what I learned years ago. The pastors have certain things that they're measured on. And I'm not saying these are wrong things, but they are measured by putting butts in seats, money in the plate, The church building is run like a business. And here is what is not done. Preachers are not preaching that hell is hot, sin is bad, God is real, and judgment's coming. Because that's not going to put butts and seats and money into play. So, again I ask, why are you surprised when a snake acts like a snake? And he said, so you're saying the church is a snake? I said, no. I'm saying that instead of the church leading society and showing them the way that it should be run, they have decided to let society teach the church how it should run. Let me give you an example. When you run a business, and by the way, for those of you that don't know, I also have a degree in business. Your next budget, all the department heads submit a budget. And the board goes over it and they decide, yes, no, maybe so, change it, whatever. And then it's voted on, the money is allocated, and that's your budget. If you run a church like that, you're not running a church, you're running a business. And that's how churches run. And I've heard many, many pastors say, yeah, but you have to have some form of control. And I said, we're talking about a church. Now, this is a true story that a pastor told one time, and he said, we have 4 pastors, and each one has to submit their budget for the year, and we have one pastor that comes in every year and puts a blank piece of paper on the table and says, that's my budget. He said the first year they did it, everybody said, what does that mean? And he said, how am I supposed to know what the Holy Spirit wants to do in this church this year? I can't put a money value on that. If he wants to bring 10,000 people to get saved in this church, and we only allocate enough for 500, we have limited the Holy Spirit. I'm not doing that. I'm going to let the Holy Spirit determine in God's house what is going to happen. And you know that church grew every year that pastor was there. They never ran short of money. Never. And they would set monster goals. Monster goals. Not based on money, but based on prayer. So, when you run a church like a business, why are you surprised that it reacts like a business? If you're going to sit around a table and take minutes at a meeting, and then have the treasurer give the report, the treasurer, and then you're going to have the secretary read the meetings from last week, and then you're going to go down your agenda, and you're going to vote on each one of them, and then you're going to discuss personnel matters. If you're going to run your church like that, why are you surprised when the one that has the most money wants power? That's how businesses run. The mistake is, just because a church building is made out of concrete does not mean it should be run like a concrete business. Now, at the root of this, in my stupid, humble little opinion, the preachers are afraid. And you want to know why they're afraid? Well, yes, but they don't have enough faith. If you truly have the faith that God is going to provide for your budget, why would you write it down? That pastor had faith. If you truly believe that your church is Spirit-led, Why are you having board meetings? Except to touch base and pray. When the church becomes all about the money, it's a business. When you, when I was in banking many, many years ago, every morning when I came into my office, I had a P&L statement on my desk, profit and loss statement. And that would tell me that week and year to date, different numbers, like the interest we made on our money last night, how much we have in reserves, how much we have in auto loans, how many we have in home loans, and it would give me all the numbers in the breakdown and they're projected for the year and how we're doing to budget every morning. So I knew exactly where we stood, how much we had on deposit, everything. Because the business is in the business to make money. Now let me back up just a little bit. No, I'll hit that at the end. Now, I do, and I told him this. I said, here's the advice that I gave him. I said, first and foremost, you have to restore peace to your family. And I don't care what that takes. Because the Holy Spirit, or Satan, is using your belief to tear your family apart. And you cannot allow that to happen. So whatever you have to do, you have to restore peace. And he said, I agree. So we discussed how to do that. And then I said, now I want you to remember this. This is very, very important. There is no perfect church building. A church building, and here's how I want you to think about it. A church building is a spiritual hospital where the sick people go to try to get well. And even if you did find the perfect church, the second you walked in the door, it's no longer perfect, unless you're Jesus Christ. So, what you need to do, and I gave him this advice, I said, you and your wife need to sit down and you need to come up with 2 lists. The first list is those things that are non-negotiable in a church. And the other one is a list of things that are negotiable. And you two need to come to an agreement on that list. And then between that time and the time when you find your church, you let her and the kids, because what her thing was is, and most women are like this, they want steady for the kids. I said, so you let her take those kids and go to the church that you're at. They don't have to go to Bible study. They don't have to go to anything you object to. But let them go to church with their mom on Sunday. And when you find that church that's going to meet your minimum requirements, then you can take them there and bring them there. Are we getting close? Okay. So that's the story of the first 2 churches. And I think I'm going to stop now because I don't want to